G'day, Glenn Morris here from the Smart Energy Lab. I'm here today with Anne Wilson from SolarPlus. Now, Anne is going to show us some hacks for sizing a battery system. All right?
Let's do it.
All right, well, let's dive into it.
Yeah, sure. And before we get too nitty-gritty and nerdy, I think it's important to remember, like, we're talking about a battery for a customer, so we have to still think about like what they want, not necessarily what we want. And they might have different goals, so we've always got to keep that in mind. Like
that's perfect. I can always ask the customer and try and get the truthful answer.
Yeah, try and get the truthful answer. Yeah.
Don't you get? I want to be green and renewable, and then they get the price and they go, but cheap too.
Yeah. Or you might be talking to one person in the household, and there's another person in the household that you're not talking to, and they've got different goals.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's always a tricky one. Generally it comes down to those three things though: save money, maximise how much renewables they use if they've got solar on the roof and they want to be able to use it at night time, and how important to them backup is. So depending on where they live and how strong or weak the grid is, how much of the household they want backed up.
That's a really good point. Finding out about what backup means to them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then does it meet their budget expectations? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Like, do they just want to keep the fridge on, or do they want to be able to run the aircon during a 5-week outage? I think that we're all in the industry convinced that batteries are a good idea, but we've still got a little bit of a way to go in bringing some customers over the line, just to build their confidence in batteries. And I think that we do that through a bit of education without oversimplifying things for them. We have to show the savings that individual is going to get, and make sure that the battery is tailored for their individual needs. And I think that that's how we bring them on board and create confidence in battery and home batteries and commercial batteries as well.
So it really starts with a more broad conversation with the customer rather than price and size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So part of that conversation is, what are their loads? Have they got much seasonal variation between summer and winter? Are they going to add new loads? Like, are they going to electrify the house? When are they buying an EV? Are they going to have some diverters, like a catch power or other kind of like hot water diverters happening in the house? What tariffs are they on at the moment? Are they likely to go to a time of use tariff or a seasonal tariff? And are there any demand tariffs in their area as well?
So quite a lot of data acquisition as part of this.
Yep. And they may already have solar, and so we have to take that into account as well, especially all too often people are sold a solar and battery system, and it shows the combined savings of the existing solar and the new battery, which is a little bit misleading. So let's take into account the energy produced by the existing solar system. Is it going to be enough to charge that battery? Do they need a little bit more solar? Things like that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with the battery rebate, matching that solar to whatever size rebate you want to go for a battery, getting that right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. So that's what SolarPlus does. It's kind of like the bread and butter. You know this.
If you look on the picture here, you might notice one of those people is me. Yeah. So Laurie and I started SolarPlus like over a dozen years ago. Anne, who's Laurie's partner and also has been integral to the success of SolarPlus, is one of our key trainers. So there you go. So tell me, Anne, what are we looking at here?
So this is the process of doing a roof layout in SolarPlus, and then generating a 3D image of the roof so that the client can kind of visualise what's going to happen with their system. And that's just a very quick view of some of the analytics that you'll get with the system projections.
Well, this is pretty detailed. Of course, there's a commercial project here.
Yeah. But what I want to talk about today is just a few case studies to kind of paint the picture of some metrics that we can use for battery sizing. And so I want to run through an average house with existing solar, and then what happens when we change the load profile. What if we increase the load, say they're electrifying, add new solar, what effect the battery booster or the cheaper home battery rebate's going to have, and what effect a VPP is going to have.
What's VPP?
A virtual power plant.
Okay. And what on earth does that do?
So that's basically where a third party will be able to control the battery and sell energy from the battery to the grid at times when the spot price of electricity peaks. So you can get much better savings from the battery. So different companies provide them. You might be familiar with Amber or AGL do one, a bunch of different companies do them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Okay, so we're just going to use as performance indicators just the simple payback period, the powered by renewables percentage. In other words, how much of the site load is covered by PV and battery, and simple hours of autonomy.
So we're not doing something that an accountant would go for, net present value. It's just your basic, I saved $20, so that's the benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I could calculate that, but I think for the purpose of comparison, it's just better to keep it simple for now.
Well, I think most people think in that way, unless you're an accountant.
Yes. All right. Yeah. So do you have a rule of thumb for batteries?
Go big or go home.
Okay. Fair enough. We're going to look at a couple of different guidelines. So people will be pretty familiar with solar self-consumption and using that as a guideline and knowing that in certain areas, say a 60% solar self-consumption will give you a great ROI. And maybe people are familiar with using the PV to load ratio as a design guide. So especially for off-grid, you're probably used to saying, oh yeah, I want my PV to produce roughly double what my daily load is as a rough design guide. So that, in other words, we're comparing the average PV production to the average load kilowatt hours a day. But then I want to introduce now the battery to load ratio. So that is the battery kilowatt hour capacity to the average daily load. And what might be a new metric for some people is the battery utilisation ratio. And that's the average daily discharge versus the usable capacity of the battery. So pretty much like how much are you cycling that battery every single day?
Why is that important?
Because the higher that is, the more you're getting out of the battery, right? So if you've got a battery utilisation ratio of 100%, that means that you're using 100% of the battery every single day.
Yep.
But if you've got a really big battery, but you're only pulling out of it 10% every day, you're not getting the most out of that battery.
So you're not buying it as an ornament.
Yes.
Yeah. And batteries don't generate renewable energy, they just store it.
Yeah, you've got to have the power available to put into it and the load to take out of it. Yeah. So, this is a scenario of a typical day. It's not an average day, but this is an actual kind of typical day in the life of a work-from-home family that are using 20 kilowatt hours a day. They've already got 6.6 kilowatt of PV on the roof, and they've gone for this kind of typical 10 kilowatt hour battery. Let's just say they're on a time of use tariff of 40 cents of peak, 30 cents shoulder, off peak 23, and a feed in of 6. And so what's happening here in this graph, we can see that dotted line is the state of charge of the battery. So it's coming down and getting down here to about 17%, and then the sun's coming out, it's fully charging, and then it's lasting through the day. That's a typical day in April, which is not too bad. So that obviously the yellow is the solar generation for that day, and then in blue we've got the load coming here, and that kind of marine, what would you call that colour blue? Maybe it's more
turquoise.
Of a turquoise, yeah. That's the...
or teal.
The teal. That's the battery discharging to the loads there.
So would you want that grey battery charge to be the whole of the solar production?
You'd want some of the solar to go directly to loads because that's efficient as well. So having a lot of your loads come on during the day, maybe by timers or diverters, if you can, Yep.
So you don't really have to cover all of your solar production with a battery to capture it all?
No. And you want to minimise essentially export because you're not getting paid hardly anything for it.
Yep.
So, any export that can go to a battery instead is good.
So this system would be exporting in the afternoon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, it's just actually not shown. I've blanked that out in the in the graph. just to simplify it a little bit.
Yeah, I can see you can turn on all these different parameters and it gets a bit confusing.
Yeah, we had too much information. It might be a bit of overload.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can actually just, this is a static picture. It's not live, but you can in SolarPlus turn them on and off just to build up the picture, especially if you're face-to-face with the client and you just want to step them through.
Like if I was the client asking that question, you just turn on solar export and you go, there's how much you'll be exporting.
Yeah.
Right.
Or I might start that with, here's the solar, here's your load.
Right.
What if we add the battery and this is how it's going to charge up now? And just build that story up.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so these are different battery options for that scenario that we looked at before. And so I've highlighted in bold that 10.4 kilowatt hours, and I've just gone through a couple of different scenarios, stepping it up in increments of roughly one battery module of 5 kilowatt hours. And so we can see here that best payback period was this is before battery rebate pricing, by the way, is 12 years. The powered by renewables percentage is 93% there. And this is the interesting part. If you add another battery module, so increase it to 15.6 kilowatt hours, your powered by renewables percentage is only going up by 3%.
Yep.
So it's not doing very much. In fact, we see that once you get to about 95% powered by renewables, trying to increase that to 100% is really hard.
Diminishing returns.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a problem that we see over and over again in modellings to try and get the whole NEM to 100% renewables, but also with off-grid jobs, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's that last little bit that's
Expensive.
So
Explain to me, why have you highlighted the 10.4?
Because it has the best payback period.
I see, the 12 years.
Yeah, the 12
Right.
years, yeah.
It's still quite a long time.
It is still quite a long time, yeah. I've used pretty conservative pricing on this, and it's before any rebates.
So it's probably worth making the point that batteries don't automatically pay for themselves. They provide other services like backup, but also they insulate you a little bit against increased electricity prices. And, of course, it's all about what the current rebates are available. And as we know, the battery rebate's going to really take a few years off that.
Absolutely, yep. And in fact, in terms of increasing electricity prices, I've been pretty conservative with the tariff escalation rate on this one. I think I've only put it at 3%, so I could have increased that a little bit more and made that look
You could have had the go nuclear option where the prices just go, whoa.
Yeah. Add in a free bomb shelter? No. No. Okay. So we see here the battery utilisation rate is 85%, right? And the smaller battery option gives us a higher battery utilisation rate. That's at 98%. So we see that the highest battery utilisation is not necessarily the best payback period. And I'll show you why in a moment. Just as a bit of a diversion though, this is the same situation except that they're using most of their power at night time, so it's more of a away during the day, come home at night, everything else remaining the same. And we see this time that battery gets depleted much quicker, obviously, and on that exact same typical April day, it's now running out in the morning. So it's not getting them quite through that. So compared with the other load, so this is just the high daytime use compared with the high evening use, everything else the same. What we notice though is the payback period is heaps better. Right?
Yes.
So I don't know if you've noticed that sometimes when people are selling just solar, they try and, increase the daytime electricity use to make the payback period look better. It's actually the opposite with batteries. So
why is that?
Because your battery utilisation ratio goes up.
Oh.
You're using more of the battery at night time.
But also with many time of use tariffs, that's the expensive, evening tariffs that you're avoiding.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
No, that's really counterintuitive. I would have thought, use power when the sun shines is the best option. Yep.
All right. So we go for a larger load. So keeping everything else the same PV, but we increase the size of the load. Let's just say that, they've gone for the electric stove, they got rid of the gas. Now, the best return is actually slightly on the larger battery. It's the 15.6 kilowatt hour, but the powered by renewables percentage is still probably not what people would be after, like 64%. If you're getting a battery, you'd probably be expecting that more of your home is powered by your own solar and battery, right? And the battery utilisation a little bit low. And this is basically because that battery to load ratio is really low, right? So 0.39, and the PV self-consumption is really high. So if we look at what's happening in this scenario here, basically on that same April day, the battery's not even getting full.
Right.
Right? So we need, well, the answer to the question?
Go big or go home.
Yeah, and more panels.
Well, the answer to every problem is more solar panels.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, but how much more solar? You know, obviously sometimes you're restricted by what can fit on the roof.
Yes.
But
you've chosen a 6.6, which is sort of tied to the grid tie systems that don't have batteries. But once you add a battery, you've unlocked the potential to have more PV and still get the government rebate for solar.
Yeah. You're not locked into that oversizing of 1.33. You can now oversize beyond that if there's a battery on that.
I mean, many manufacturers give you 100% oversizing, so 200% solar compared to your inverter sizing.
Absolutely, yeah. If the manufacturer lets you do it.
I mean, people think, oh, it does make sense. My inverter's at 5 kilowatts. Why would I put 10 kilowatts of solar? But actually, a lot of inverters, especially DC-coupled hugh inverters, can sing and dance, and that means they can charge the battery and provide AC power to your home at the same time.
Yeah. Hugh Jackman.
Yep.
But just to really illustrate that point of the big load and the small PV, it's interesting to look at a load a week in July, and you see here this dotted line down the bottom here is the battery state of charge, and really in July we've got a slightly higher load and cloudy weather, and the battery's hardly doing anything.
So it's limping along through some rainy days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I was the consumer, I'd forked out for this battery, I'd probably be a little bit dissatisfied, especially if I didn't know that that's what I was in for. So, yeah, if we add another, just for argument's sake, 6.6 of PV onto it, this is the exact same scenario for that exact same week. We're now seeing the battery get to fully charged 5 days out of 7.
Even on poor days, getting some charge, you're getting up to 40%. Yeah, so it's not all about, oversizing is not wasting energy. Sometimes, a day isn't very sunny and you actually can't get a full power out of your inverter anyway. So more solar helps.
Absolutely. Okie dokie. And here, just to illustrate that point, we see with the additional PV system over here, our payback period jumps. Yeah, okay. But that's because we're including now the payback associated with the new panels.
Yes.
Which is always better.
Really good. Yeah.
So we've got a combined payback of the battery.
So you're basically
and
saying adding
PV.
more solar is cost effective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also we've got a powered by renewables percentage that the customer's going to be more happy with. Battery utilisation is now up to 98%.
Well, there's 4 million homes at the moment in Australia that have got rooftop solar. Probably about 3 million of them have got those little 6.6 kilowatt inverter sort of PV arrays. So there's going to be a lot of people wanting to upgrade. Yeah. So this is a great example of why adding more solar and a battery really can bring down the payback period.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be interesting times as well. Like I know that a lot of those really old systems are just going to be taken off the roof. It's going to be really important to recycle them properly, deal with that properly as well, because sometimes it will make sense to do that, but other times it will make sense to leave them there as an AC coupled solution and add more PV that might be DC coupled to the battery. Yeah,
so here at the lab we actually had about, 40, 50 panels we recycled recently. Yeah.
We did like 100.
We did 100.
We had like a whole back of a truck.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. There was a cost associated with it because it is not a simple material to dispose of, but it's worth it. Do the right thing.
Yeah. All right. So in this scenario now, we've got different amounts of additional PV with the same size battery. So looking at a 26 kilowatt hour battery and then increasing the amount of PV here. And as we increase the PV, obviously the payback period just keeps going down because there's more PV.
Yep, more solar. That's right.
And we get our powered by renewables percentage to this point at 96. It's pretty good. And the battery utilisation of about 86%, which is kind of starting to emerge as a bit of a sweet spot in terms of the best payback.
You know, a lot of people go, but there's no more room on my roof for solar. But if you've got a, quarter acre section and you've got a driveway and you park your car in there, why not put in a solar carport?
Yeah, for sure. Win-win.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so starting to see some of these rules of thumb emerging, but we're still working on refining those because you chuck in different variables like when power is used, what the time of use tariff is the array facing all north or a bit of east and west, and it throws these out a little bit. So that's just an example of that, a load with more seasonal variation.
So that's a year's worth of production?
It's a year's worth of load data.
Load data.
So on the top there, it's pretty steady, but the bottom one is high summer use and high winter use. And the higher variation has less of a payback period because the battery utilisation is lower.
Right, yep.
So we've still got a bit of study to go in order to be able to be really firm with these. And so I'm doing a little bit of work with some RMIT students at the moment, and there's actually another university in Canada that's interested in looking at this too with us. So it's exciting times ahead.
Wow.
Yeah.
And where can people see the results of their research?
When it gets published.
Okay. Well,
I've got to finish
link in the description as usual.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. What we're looking at here is metadata. So, like lots of people, it's now a lot easier to get actual load consumption data.
So you're talking about the utilities meter?
Yeah, the utility meter. Being careful that you have to make sure that that's the consumption data and not just the net that's mixed in with any solar export. So here we've got the ability to visualise it in a heat map, which is just really easy then to just take a quick look at it and say, okay, yeah, this is where the peaks are happening in the evening, and you can see the variation over the year. We've got each row here as a different month of the year.
Oh, yeah. So as winter comes on, it pushes further into the evening. Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably a bit of daylight saving effect there too.
Yeah, but for this, yeah, maybe. And this particular load, it doesn't change a hell of a lot over the year. But we've got it happening in half-hour increments, so we can get a little bit more accurate with the modelling by running the calculations every half hour. And in fact, if we had this metadata running at 10 minutes, then we can do the calculations every 10 minutes as well. So you get even more accurate.
Yep.
Okay, so here we have 30 kilowatt hour a day load, 15 kilowatt hour battery, and 14 kilowatt of PV. And in December, it's running great, really maxing out there the battery state of charge for every day across there. And that annual pattern over here, what we're looking at here at the top is the top of those bars is the total consumption. So we can see a little bit of variation. But that darker colour here is how much of that consumption comes from the grid. So we can see it's just going up a little bit in June, July. We could increase that by adding more PV and more battery, but it's not worth it financially to do that, to get that last little percentage.
I guess there's also the opportunity to educate the customer about discretionary use of surplus energy. So in summer, like in January, they're going to be exporting in the afternoon. And what do you know? It's often when it's hot. What helps cool the house?
Yeah.
Run your aircon. Run your aircon when it's sunny because you're just using up your surplus solar.
And run it during the day so that it's soaking
pre-cool the house even if you're not home. Yeah, if it's free energy.
This is just looking at some scenarios of the effect of the battery booster, I think. The cheaper home batteries.
We would explain the acronyms too.
Sure, PDRS. Anyone in New South Wales will be familiar with that, but that's the peak demand reduction scheme or the New South Wales battery rebate. Best one is a rebate that applies to all batteries, and the best two is just for batteries that are connected as an additional rebate for batteries that are connected to a VPP. And we see here, like, again, I've used like retail pricing that's pretty conservative. I'm sure that there's people who are selling batteries cheaper than this, but it's just a kind of an indicative figures.
Right, so it's the mid-range numbers,
Maybe,
which is
yeah.
good. It could be less.
Yep. And now what we see, the interesting thing here is that down here with the battery booster, it's now more economical to go up to that 20 kilowatt hour battery. So yeah, that's made a difference in those ratios. So now we see that the powered by renewables going up.
98%, wow. And the payback's 6 years, wow.
Yeah.
It's looking good.
It's looking good.
Yep. And you had a VPP, which, because the battery booster requires you to have VPP functionality, it's pretty easy just to switch it on.
Yep.
Yeah.
And of course, the earnings from that VPP are going to vary depending on the provider and depending on the year. It's a bit of a crystal ball, so I've just guessed at $400 a year.
Right.
Yeah. Better not show that
Am I?
on YouTube. Yeah.
Cool.
So that's pretty much it. I don't think we need to go into that. But actually, one more thing that I did want to touch on, though, is with backup, making sure that the inverter is going to be able to provide the energy in the event of a blackout for the load, right? So anyone used to doing off-grid sizing will know that some loads, like motors, can surge to 7 times their continuous rating. So say you have a 1 kilowatt water pump, it surge instantaneously, but when you first switch it on, so it's a direct online pump, it might go to 7 kilowatt for that just initial
Fraction of a second.
Yeah. And it's only a fraction of a second, but the inverter has to be able to provide it.
Yeah.
And a typical off-grid inverter will have this big iron core transformer. It will be very heavy, but it can do that, right? Whereas grid-connected inverters will be transformerless in order... Maybe, do you want to explain that bit of why they have to be?
Well, they're lighter and cheaper and more efficient.
Yeah, but wasn't there something about the transformer-based ones actually can't comply with AS4 777.2?
I wouldn't want to say that of all manufacturers, but it is a challenge to get the amount of phase shift from a transformer-based inverter.
Okay, right.
Yep.
Cool. So just be careful with that. So make sure that any loads that you want to put on the backup circuit, make sure you take into account the surge rating of those loads, and so especially anything with a motor. So fridges will have even though they might just be 300 watts continuous, when they surge, they'll go higher. Air cons. And
particularly your older appliances, like older fridges, that there was a change in the efficiency of fridges. They moved from reciprocating to screw compressors, and air conditioners went from just simple motor to inverter controlled, and so that made them soft start. So soft start appliances, which is like your modern ones, are much less taxing on that surge demand.
Yep. You might only have a surge of 2 or 3 times, right?
Yeah, even less. Yep.
Great. So just keep that in mind. We do have a calculator in SolarPlus where this is like your typical calculator for AS NZS 4509, where you can factor in each load and what you want to be included in the maximum demand, whether that's the continuous demand or the surge demand.
So this gets you a very accurate picture of a customer's use with seasonal variation.
Yes.
Yeah, and probably more applicable for an off-grid design.
Yes.
Yeah. Unless you're really a thorough person and doing it for on-grid. Because you've got to go and find this stuff out from the customer, what their appliances are.
And that kind of comes back to what the customer's after. If their main concern is backup and they want to be sure that in the event of a big storm that certain loads are backed up, you probably do want to go to this amount of level of detail. Yeah, so that's it. Coming back to working out what the customer's needs are. got some rules of thumb. We're refining them at the moment with some students, and yeah, it comes back to giving people an informed choice.
Yeah. So since this is actually demonstrating the power of SolarPlus, I mean, who would use SolarPlus?
I guess installers and designers and salespeople who want to go the next level of getting good accuracy, building up that relationship of trust with the customer, to show them that this solution is fit for their needs, that's going to show the returns based on just the equipment that's been proposed, like the new solar and the battery, not combining it with the existing solar. Yeah.
I guess it shows if you go through the trouble of doing a design and using the customer's data that you're really engaged, and there's a high level of trust and confidence. I mean, the days when I used to sell solar, that's a while ago, sometimes I'd come up with a customer who'd just been given a quote and it was just like a brochure with a dollar sign written on it, and that's all they got. They got no performance estimates, no assessment of their roof, no assessment of their loads. And the response often from customers, well, you turned up, you measured stuff, I choose you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've gone the extra mile. Even though it took you a little bit longer, you get the sale.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Well, Anne, thanks very much for showing us how to choose a battery.
Yeah, no worries. It was good.
Cool. Hey.